All right, everyone. I'm Sam Charrington, founder of TWiML, and welcome to another Solutions Guide Spotlight demo. Today, we're going to dig into the Weights and Biases platform with Andrew Truong, a machine learning engineer at the company. Andrew, let's get started with some brief background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Weights and Biases?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. For folks who aren't familiar, Weights and Biases, we're a company that makes tools for machine learning practitioners. So we really got started in 2018 with experiment tracking, and so we help practitioners keep track of all those configs, hyperparameters, metrics, artifacts, you name it. We want to make it easy to keep track of. And today, we're expanding that into model management. So I'd like to show you a little bit about the model registry that we're building out and some of the ways that it hooks into some of the other things that we're building here at Weights and Biases.
I'm looking forward to digging in. Why don't you pull your screen up and let's jump into the demo. It's been pretty exciting to see Weights and Biases grow from that core of experiment management to add artifacts and tables, and now this model registry feature that you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, super cool. So for folks who aren't familiar with Weights and Biases yet, we give you a couple of lines of code to really quickly and easily start logging and tracking any of the metrics or things to do with your experiment. And so here, just as a very quick example, all you have to do is type in 1b.init and then 1b.log, or in this case, run.log, to track any of the metrics that you care about. What you'll see is if you're using a Jupyter notebook and you're a fan of notebooks like I am, you'll actually get a view of all of the metrics that you're tracking live in real time in the notebook itself. But of course, if you prefer a more classic like web UI, then you can visit it over here as well. Okay, and it's not just scalar metrics, kind of like these line charts and scatter plots that you're seeing here, but any sort of rich media, things like images, segmentation masks, bounding boxes, 3-point clouds, you name it. We want to support it. So the full set of types is available on our website. But if you don't see a type that on there, then let us know. We're always looking to add support for new types.
Awesome. So that core of Weights and Biases is about logging parameters and data and all these things that a modeler cares about when they're building a model. Where does model registry come in?
Yeah, awesome. So today, we're really focused on building tools that make it easy for different practitioners to collaborate with each other, right? So if you and I are working together on a modeling project, we might be trying out different types of models. You might have different things that you're logging completely. And, today you might have to shoulder tap each other and say like, here's my TensorBoard, check it out. But, we really want to make that simple and like make it easy to communicate between practitioners. There's this other step kind of further down the line when you finally have a model and you're ready to hand it off. And so all modelers love it when their models hit production, but the challenge is how do you actually get it into production, right? Yeah. So if you think about the problem or like the ML model lifecycle kind of at a very high level, at the very, very beginning, there's some sort of problem that you're trying to solve, right? So either I'm trying to detect things in front of this car, I'm trying to approve or not approve a person for a mortgage, whatever it might be, there's some sort of task or some sort of problem that we're trying to solve. And people that are building models, they love trying out lots of different model types, a lot of model architectures, data sets, all sorts of crazy stuff. And we want to make it easy for them to do that. But when you come to pass it off to folks on the ops side of the fence, what they really care about is having like this consistency, make it easy for me to actually deploy this and make it so that I don't actually accidentally break anything in the process. So the model registry is really about having this task-oriented view, which is easy for practitioners to hand stuff over to the ops folks. Does that make sense?
That does. I'd love to see it.
Cool. All right. So let me swap out of the notebook and into the model registry. So here is an example of the registry right here. So I'm going to open this up in a full screen. On the left-hand side, what you're going to see is a collection of tasks, right? So these are the different use cases that we talked about just a moment ago, right? And all of these are available for all of the different projects that I'm working on. So I might be working on multiple different projects at the same time. I might be on different teams, or different teams might even have like many different models that they're building. I can see the full collection of all of the things over here.
And is there some permissioning system wherein I'm only seeing the ones that I've got access to, as opposed to, and my colleague will only see the ones that they've got access to?
That's right. So here you'll only be able to see the subset of models that you have access to.
Okay.
Cool. So here I'm showing you our new model registry view. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see all of those tasks that we were talking about earlier, right? So each of these is a different use case, of which each of those use cases might have different models applied to them, right? So if you think about like, let's say you and I were running like a pizza shop, right? That pizza shop might have many different use cases that it has, right? So there might be someone that's dedicated to making the dough. There might be a person who's putting on sauce and toppings. There might be a delivery person. And what we want to be able to do is at any point in time, if there is a better model or a better dough maker in this example, then you want to be able to quickly identify that and then swap that in, right? So
you're kind of abstracting away from the models themselves to the tasks that those models are built to perform. And the assumption is that those models will evolve over time.
Exactly. So if you're an ops person, you don't really care that, or model version number 1672 of this particular model type is better or worse. All you care about is give me the latest and greatest version. Just tell me what is best. Doesn't matter what best means to you. Just tell me that it's the best one and let me actually use it and deploy it. Right. So this task view makes it super easy for those folks to kind of digest these really complex models.
Is the idea that the repository is more targeted at that ops persona, whereas the modeler themselves might use something lower level like version control?
So that's a great question. And I think it's actually a bridge between the two. So if you think about in some of these organizations, oftentimes the people that are building the models have completely different reporting structures than the people who are actually deploying the models, right? So they roll up to different managers, they have different OKRs, they're completely separated. And sometimes there's tension about, on one side, I just want to deploy a model. And on the other side, I don't want anything to break. Please follow like all of these procedures, right? So, today it sounds like folks are using some, strange combination of version control and all sorts of crazy scripts and, docs about how to deploy models. But we really want to make it super simple. So let me first start by showing you that here, for a particular task, you can see all of the things that are associated with that task. So on the left-hand side, I'm clicking on this incidentally pastry detection model. And on the right-hand side, you'll see some useful metadata. Things like who created this model, where is it being stored, what version is it, where is the source, so what model is actually being used for this particular use case, and what generated it, right? So if I'm ever curious, I can actually click into what created this particular model, this particular pastry detector, and I can learn more about that just by clicking into it, right? So I get to see all of these nice curves and all of the nice little predictions that went alongside it. Okay.
And is that a notebook or is that a kind of traditional weights and biases report?
Oh yeah, great question. So what you're looking at here is a weights and biases dashboard, but all of these individual charts, we've actually made them kind of like componentized, where you can actually put individual charts or each of these tables or different widgets into a report and then share those out with other folks.
Got it, cool.
So I'm gonna head back here for a moment and kind of show you. So here, we saw what model this was, what bout of training actually produced this model. You can even see what were the upstream artifacts that was used to generate this. So if you think about like a model that is maybe being continuously deployed, you might have a rolling new data set, and you want to see what version of data set was this model trained on. And in fact, there might be even other maybe slightly scarier cases where maybe you accidentally leaked some data, or there's some data that the model is being trained on that is not supposed to be there anymore. Let's say you submit like a GDPR request or some sort of HIPAA request where you say, please remove me from the data set. Well, now you need to make sure that actually that person is not in the data set. And so in this very simple UI, you can very quickly check to see not just what generated this model, but what went into the model itself. So you're learning a little bit about how the sausage is made.
Now, you haven't said that magic word, but model lineage or lineage and with regard to models and being able to trace all the way back to the data, that's what this is sounding like to me. Is that the idea here?
Yes, that's part of it. So incidentally, we do have a lineage tab. Thanks for bringing it up. So here, I'll click into the lineage just to show you what's possible. And so here, we kind of see this end-to-end pipeline view. So this is a compressed view. I can actually hit explode to kind of blow this up into kind of a deeper view of this. But let's keep it simple for now. And so you'll see kind of this end-to-end view, right? So if you think about your classic model pipeline, there's some raw data. It goes through a series of transforms. eventually you train a model, you do some evaluation, and then you make some predictions, and then the cycle repeats itself, right? So this lineage view here actually shows you that graph of how data is flowing through your system from its raw state all the way to a prediction.
And does that graph correspond to an underlying graph that's instantiated in something like an Airflow or a Kubeflow or something like that? Or is it more just kind of an abstract representation of steps?
Yeah, that's a really awesome question too. So incidentally, we actually do hook into tools like Kubeflow pipelines or Metaflow. So if you're using some of these data orchestration tools, we actually are able to inspect the graph or like the pipeline that you declare. And then based on the inputs and outputs, automatically generate this graph for you. If you're rolling your own custom thing, we also have primitives that let you say, basically use an artifact or log an artifact to construct these arrows in this graph.
Got it. Got it. And you mentioned artifact. I spoke previously with Lucas about artifacts when that capability was launched. It looks like that the model registry is kind of built on top of artifacts. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right.
The relationship between the two.
Yeah, so the view that you're seeing here is really similar to our artifacts view. So of course, all of the things that you're logging here are artifacts. And so you can see stuff like the metadata, like the files, like the lineage. But we have some other goodies that are put on top. And so some of those goodies look like here, the usage tab. So once you've declared a model or declared a use case, you might want to see where it's being used downstream, right? So let's say you are shipping predictions out to somebody. You want to actually see, I have this use case, I have this model, but where is it actually being consumed downstream? And we give you a really simple API. You can actually just copy and paste this. And we'll do that in just a sec, but you can copy and paste this into your notebook or your scripts and pull any artifact down to your local environment.
This seems like a really key feature. If you've got a model, you're in a large organization, the model is, kind of fundamental in some way, and it gets used broadly. If you update that model, well, maybe talk more broadly about kind of that the lifecycle part of model ops when you've got a registry like this. When you update a model, do people kind of optionally update their usage of your new model to the latest version, or how does that lifecycle work?
Yeah, that's like the perpetual pain point of like deploying these models, right? Because there's always like a new model and there's always like, no. I actually have version 17 of this model. Please deploy this one. Yep. It's better for, some reason. So you'll notice up here, and perhaps also on the side here, that we have different version numbers that are tied to each of these use cases.
Yeah.
So if you click on this, you'll actually see a couple of things. So first, you'll see the versions that I was talking about. So in this case, we have 2 different versions of this pastry model. But you'll also see things like tags, and you'll also see things like more compliancy things like the action history, basically understanding kind of how this model or how this task has evolved over time. All of these can be used, depending on which side of the fence you are on, to kind of understand, what is the application of this modeling task.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to click on one that has slightly more versions. And first, I'll show you kind of the all versions view. So here, you'll see a giant collection of all of the different versions of models that we trained.
Yep.
Right. So here, I can see not just what the versions were, but when they were created, where they're being used downstream, how large they are, and any other sort of metadata that you care about. And then here, you'll actually also get the set of aliases or tags. Now, the tags are really powerful because you can use this really easily in any sort of CI system, right? So here, you might notice that we have like a latest, production, and staging tags. So you might have a CI system that says, hey, detect when a new thing gets added to the latest tag and kind of update or run your CI accordingly. And then as those things are changing, they'll actually get updated in the action history. So here you can see not just that the tag changed, but who changed it, when was it changed? And this can be really useful for auditing and compliance cases. So if you accidentally deploy a model that maybe has like PII or something a bit more sensitive, then you want to be able to trace back just where exactly did that thing happen, and then how do we kind of account for it.
This looks a lot like a commit history. We touched on the relationship between the model registry and a version repository at a high level, but can you talk about that more concretely?
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of like a commit history. I guess in this case, it's not really about the commits for data as you would in like version control, but it's more like commits for tags or like metadata, right? So here you're adding or deleting different aliases. Maybe you're adding a tag to say this is ready for an extended set of evaluations or different types of tests. And then when that's done, you can kind of remove that flag, or this is ready for production, or this is not ready for production, things like that.
Got it.
All right, so I want to kind of very quickly switch back to the code for a moment here and kind of show you what's possible. So there's some code here in my notebook that basically sets up the pipeline to get it ready for model training. And I have this kind of model that I've trained a little bit here, right? So you might have this flow as well as a practitioner. And as you're going through this, right, you might train your model, you might have your different scores that you're keeping track of, different artifacts that you're logging, all of that stuff. And now you might want to add it to a task, right? So we've logged all this stuff, we want to add it to a task. How do you do that? So first of all, you need a task, right? So let's create a task together. In the top right here, you'll see this create model collection button. So if you click on this, you'll see a couple of things, right? So who is creating this task? Where is this task living? And then of course, what is the task about, right? So in this case, I'm going to call it like my TWiML model. Let's call it TWiML podcast answerer. Okay. And we can hit create. Yeah, so we created this new model use case, right? And so here you'll see that we have a very simple code snippet that you can just copy and paste, right? So I'll literally just copy this code. I'll come over here to where I can save this model, and maybe I'll add it right here, right? So I have this artifact that I'm keeping track of above, right? So for simplicity, I'll actually just comment this out, and I'll call this an artifact, which is what it's called above. And I'll run this. And what you'll see is we're now linking this model that we trained in here in the notebook to this particular model collection on the right. Okay. And so if I refresh, what you'll actually see is now the model that we just trained in our notebook is now hooked up to this particular use case. Okay, and that comes with all of the benefits that we talked about earlier, things like the overview, things like the metadata, things like where it's being used, any sort of files, all of that stuff is available right here in one central repository. Okay.
If you go back to overview, there is a source version field and it links to a file and a version. Where does that connection come from?
Yeah, great question. So the model that I'm training above, the artifact that I'm generating is this kind of learner thing here. Okay. And so I've created it like this. Okay. So now that we've created this task, right? So here you can see the task here. We have this snippet of code that we can run. Okay, so I'm literally just going to copy and paste this code snippet here. I'm going to add it above. In this training code up here, I've actually defined the artifact to be called artifact. So I'm actually just going to comment this out really quick. Okay, and just call it artifact. And what you'll see is now we're linking the model that we just trained in this notebook over to this use case. So let's say I'm happy, I've trained this model, I'm happy, I want to ship it. All I have to do is say link artifact. And now that this is complete, if I refresh this, what you'll see is actually all of the results are piped in to here. So this is the exact model that I just trained, and it has all the benefits that we talked about earlier, things like the overview, the metadata, the usage, lineage, files, all of that stuff is being piped into one central place for this particular use case. And now let's say that you're an actual ops person, right? And you actually want to use this somewhere downstream. It's as simple as in the usage tab, you just copy and paste the new code that just magically appeared. You can paste it below. And just like that, we'll start to download a copy of this model that you can use downstream, right? So using that downstream might be deploying the model. It might be moving it through some sort of CI/CD system. Or maybe it's just another person that wants to check out this particular model that's been deployed. So it might actually be other practitioners or engineers downstream that kind of want to tinker with this model that you built.
So this wouldn't typically happen in a notebook. It might happen in a GitHub action or something like that, for example.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. I think another way, which I think is really interesting, is so folks are probably familiar with this idea of like repositories, right? So maybe you have like a Docker hub or like a container registry. Maybe you use like Linux and you have like the package repository. What is a repository? It's basically this way for a developer to say, I'm done with this code and I want to package it in a way that's easy for other people to use. Right. So just as like how, and Docker is the same thing. So just like how we have these repositories for containers and repositories for packages, you can think of this as a repository for models, right? So we're done with this model. We want to package it up in a very simple and nice and easy way to use. Yeah, so that's like the main thing that I wanted to show today, right? So so at the very beginning, we kind of started off with weights and biases. We're kind of logging and tracking all of our experiments. We're logging these artifacts. We're building different types of data sets and models, and we're kind of logging them to weights and biases. Then we had a particular use case that we wanted to solve for. In this case, we had this TWiML podcast responder. We trained our model. We attached or we linked our model to that particular use case. And now anyone who wants to can very easily just use the usage API, pull this model down and start hacking away on whatever it is that they want to do.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you also spent quite a bit of time talking about how this enables those two personas, the modeler and the ops person, to more effectively collaborate, which is important.
Yeah, exactly. Often there's like a really big tension between those two teams, but everyone really just at the end of the day wants to have the best model deployed, right? So we want to make it super easy for folks to collaborate and really start shipping some great stuff.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks so much for walking us through this demo. It's very great to learn about this stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.